invited to post their best games of chess, or for that matter any game of chess, preferably at a long time control, and I will make a video of their game. I want to get to know more about how the members of this group are playing. And it's a very enlightening series. There's been 25 videos posted so far, and in effect what I do is I teach you guys how to analyze, and that's very important. How do you analyze? Well, I give demonstrations. We just basically look at candidate moves with ideas. We examine maybe one or two lines. We can't go into every single line to get you started, because my video lessons program is committed to teaching you to play better, and the way it worked for me was to analyze my games, and then I have other methods in place. Postal chess is what I used, and we have constantly have online games going, matches, team matches going, and there's some more big events coming up, which will be all apparent very soon. Anyway, let's have a look at this game, and hopefully I can help Mr. Heister here, who submitted this game. It was played in the, he gives a note here. Let's just read what he said. This was played in the Chicago Open 2011, the under 1900 section. Barring the opening, it was a very nice tactical middle and finish. The flurry at the end was one of the longest combinations I've seen in my own tournament games. It certainly is an extremely interesting sacrifice. I mean not sacrifice. There is a sacrifice, but combinations. We'll see this as we get there. Okay, so far we're kind of following a known path. Black's playing the Sicilian defense, and White chooses the Marazzi bind against an accelerated dragon. Okay, and there's plenty of theory written about this. Analysis of that goes beyond the scope of this video. Let's just kind of look at ideas and principles. Okay, both sides need to focus on getting their development, and that's what they're doing right now. Okay, they're getting the pieces out, and a lot of times I've had similar positions like this. A lot of times I like to get this knight to e3, and the idea of that is I'm just eyeballing d5. You know, I've got firm control over it. It's just a matter of choice and preference. This bishop does need to get developed, so it's a perfectly good move. And now White solidifies e4. This is fine. Now this isn't a very good bishop on e2, but we're not too worried about that bishop. The game is essentially even. The reason we're not too worried about that bishop is because all the pieces are on the board. There's been, one pawn exchanged, and there's plenty of time to complete development, start maneuvering, and think of a middle game plan. Okay, so before we get into the middle game plan, it's going to start here. Black has almost completed his development. He just needs to develop his queen, and it's his move. What should Black do against the Marazzi bind? Okay, that's a good question. What should he do? Well, according to the Grandmaster theory, and this is something he doesn't do, you have to prepare it. You basically try to prepare for b5. Okay? You try to prepare for a pawn break of b5, and this opens up some files on the queen side. And after you've done that, then you try to prepare a break of d5. You strike in the center. And if you do it correctly and carefully, it offers Black even chances. Okay? Of course, you know, played in a tournament game with two players in an under 1900 section, chances are they're not going to play perfectly, and also chances are maybe one of them won't know the plan. And in this case, it's Black that doesn't know the plan. And so, you know, this is a very, very nice game on White's part. I was very impressed. But in order to win a nice game, your opponent has to allow you to get the type of position that gives you that nice game. And it's not altogether obvious why it happens, but I'll point out why it happens when we get to that point. Okay, so I kind of think that the reason Black went wrong here in this game was, number one, not only did he not know how to deal with the Marazzi bind, but number two, Black was trying to win too quickly. In other words, there's nothing wrong with trying to win with Black, but Black's first objective is to equalize the position. And once you've done that, then you can start looking for a plan. Now, let's see what Black does. Okay, he puts some pressure on on the pawn on c4. Now what I would like to do, and I've done this, I've had very similar positions of like this with white. The difference being this bishop is on g2 and this pawn is up on g3. What I like to do, and I don't think white can do it here, maybe he can, b3. Okay, let me just show what I'm talking about. I've actually had two people. I was showing this in a lesson with somebody recently. I've actually had two people actually give up on this square, give up the piece on this square. The point being, okay, you're uncovering an attack on this knight. So if pawn takes knight, bishop takes. But white just takes with the knight, and after bishop takes, now sometimes, see this bishop, sometimes it's still sitting on c1 when this takes place, and white has the option of playing, or white usually needs to play knight takes a1, but here white has the perfectly good move, queen takes a1. And white basically has just acquired two minor pieces for a rook and pawn, and the game really is close to being strategically won for white, simply because the two minor pieces are going to, extra two minor pieces are going to just be a little too much for black to overcome. Eventually black's going to drop a pawn, and then white will start trading pieces and go into an ending, and then the two minor pieces will win another pawn, and it's just a matter of getting a pass pawn, and it's curtains for black. So I'm not saying black would fall into this or play this, but yet I've had two players both rated over 1700. One was 1700, one was 1800, maybe they were higher. I've actually had them play into that combination. So the question is, can white allow this? Well, I'm not sure. There's this clever move here. I don't know, maybe knight g4. White can always play bishop d4. That's not too bad. And black, it gets rid of black's long diagonal bishop, but white's getting rid of his better bishop. But it's something to look at for white. You know, trying to help white out here, improve his game, give us some ideas. So on knight g4, white has to be careful. If the bishop comes back, say to d2, queen b check could be a nuisance. Okay, so on knight g4 we could play bishop d4, as I was saying. And how does this stack up? Black's got to deal with his knight on g4 at some point. Let's see. Either puts it on e5 now, or trades the bishop first, then puts it on e5, or admits his mistake and goes back to f6. But let's just examine it. Let's do this. Let's get rid of white's better bishop. Okay, and there's a reason I want to do this. We're trying to see what can black get out of this. Okay, now what black's objective should be is to go into the Maroczy bind strategy and try to get the b5 break in. Can he do it? Well, he's got to prepare for it. His rook's a little misplaced. It might have belonged on b8. White is threatening to gobble this pawn, so let's just is he? Let's see. Maybe that refutes the whole thing. I don't know. You know, I'm not saying this is the perfect line, but maybe black can't take that bishop on d4. Maybe black has to stop and play a6 here. Okay, let's take a quick look at that. Now, if white well, wait, no, this knight's hanging. What am I thinking? So bishop d4. Where's this knight going to go? But you're not threatening the. You're going to have to go back to What if you go back to f6? You can just take it. Yeah, it's crazy. So maybe knight g4 is a bad move. I don't know. It's something for white to analyze, or the white player to analyze. But like I say, I like strategically to play b3 here and keep the option of later getting this knight to e3 so it can get into d5. Okay, so anyway, what white plays, he doesn't play b3, he plays knight a3. Now the knight's kind of misplaced, but at the same time it's actually doing a new job now. It's preventing what black needs to be, or not really preventing, but it's helping to prevent what black wants to do, break with b5. But black doesn't seem to understand that's what he needs to do. And let's see, he plays b6. He's concerned about his loose pawn on a7. So more to the point would be a6. Let's see, a6 weakens b6 a little bit. Can white take advantage of that? The idea is knight to d5, so that you're threatening to play here, but that probably is no good. Knight takes, and then black's going to gobble on b2. So a6 was, I think, is the better move for black here. Okay, and it might expose a slight problem with knight a3, but black didn't play it. And when your opponent doesn't find moves that fit the strategy of his game, or what theory has said is a recommended course. When your opponent doesn't follow the path of what he's supposed to do, it just often leads to more possibilities for you. But the trick is you've got to take advantage of the opportunities when they arise. And this is a little more advanced strategy because these players are rated anywhere from 1700 to 1899. Not everyone's rated that high yet, but you'll get there. But I'm kind of giving a master's insight into this type of position, which is culled from the examples the grandmasters have set before us. So b6 is not a bad move. Let's get b6 in. It's not a bad move. It doesn't cost black the game, but it starts limiting black's options. So now it's white's turn to come in and try to take advantage of this in whatever way, shape, and form he can. Now, you ask, well, how do you take advantage of it? Well, you've got to finish your development. Okay, the queen needs to come up to the second rank so the rooks are connected. Okay, and once you do that, then you can get your rook centralized, and then you can start thinking about the d5 square and what you want to do there. So let's see what white does, and he does exactly what I suggested. Now, I don't think it's wise for white to play bishop h6 here, because right now this is a good bishop that white has. Let's keep it on the board. Okay, so black plays b6 or bishop c6, and this is not a bad move. I think if white brings a knight into d5, he might take with the bishop, and because this bishop is going to be a poor piece for white, it won't be all that advantageous to have. I had a interesting correspondence game some 20-some years ago against a FIDE master, back when we took our time and we didn't rush moves like you guys are doing today. Very long, involved game in a similar position to this. Not exactly, but something similar. This bishop on e2 was fianchettoed, and he got rid of his light-squared bishop, and then I was left with mine, and I had enough pawns on white squares that he was able to blockade the dark squares and keep my king from penetrating, and the game became a draw. So he achieved what he wants to do, draw with black. And but anyway, it's a long, involved story. So anyway, white. I think white's next move is good. b4. Kick that knight out. The knight on c3 is covered, and white's basically just seizing space. And this is a good idea. He's getting a little better boardroom. And now the knight on b7 is very, very misplaced. How does it get back in the game? Well, it can't go to d6. It can't go to c5. It can't go to a5. So its only way back in the game is by way of d8, or it's got to sit there and play defensive chess. Okay, and by defensive chess, it's waiting to maybe prevent white from advancing at some point with c5, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Okay, so what should black do now? Okay, white basically is holding the advantage of the first move and perhaps a tempo on top of that. What's my beep going off? Somebody's beeping me. Got to decline you. I'm making a video right now. Anyway, can't talk. Normally I'll talk to him, but I can't now. Anyway, he'll know what I'm up to. He'll understand. Okay, so essentially, back to this. What should black be aiming for? Well, black should still be aiming for what I said. Okay, he should still be aiming for what I said. He should be trying for a b5 break. However, it's occurred to me because of the b6 move, which I said isn't all that bad, although it doesn't follow suit with the plan of b5, it might be that black's lost enough tempos and has enough misplaced pieces that this is a bad idea to try to break. So there's another very interesting move possibility black can adopt here, and he starts to adopt it now, and with e6, and this looks like a bad move, but it isn't. Okay, and I'll explain why in a moment. It looks like it's bad because it weakens the pawn on d6, but in return for that, it gives black a very useful square, e7. Okay, the queen can come to e7, and then the rooks are connected, and you can get a rook over to d8. And black is hunkered down and saying, you know, I got a weak pawn on d6, but I'm just going to sit here and you can't get me. Okay, so it's a strategy that comes up, white develops, that often comes up in a position they call the hedgehog. And we're very close to a hedgehog formation. The only difference being, usually black has this pawn up on a6 in the hedgehog. Now in this position you can't quite do it, at least now. That doesn't mean you can't do it. You can't do it now because this pawn on b6 hangs. And when we get to the critical point, I'll talk about it. Okay, so now black continues with rook there to d8. Now white basically, okay, let me recollect my thoughts here and organize this a little better because I'm trying to say about 3 different things at once. Okay, what white does is he trades his knight for his bishop, and there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, but the knight white's giving up is centralized. It's a good centralized piece, but it's not real, and it's not really doing all that much. It's not necessarily the best move. Now you ask, why isn't it the best move? Okay, well, as a general rule, you try it when you're playing for a win, and white should be playing for a win here simply because he has white and he has greater boardroom. Make black prove that he can equalize, but the more pieces you have on the board, the merrier. Okay, white needs a plan here, and the hedgehog is a very tough nut to crack. So in order to crack it best, you need your pieces on the board. So a good candidate move, an alternative move here, is just simply knight b3. Now the purpose of knight b3 is that eventually white wants to try to break with c5. He's not ready to do that. Okay, he's got to do some more maneuvering here. You don't want this queen on a file that may open up. Okay, that means white's got to swing this rook over and find a new home for the queen. Where's that going to be? Well, we don't know yet. It might be e1. It might be b2, although there could be some pressure on the long diagonal. We have to evaluate when we get there. So basically, if white does this, black's pretty much done all he can in this position. Black is basically saying, this is my setup. Come and beat me. Come prove it to me. Well, fine. White will do exactly that. And one strategy is to try to getting the queen out of there is get it over to f2 and have more pressure on c5. Because the one drawback with the hedgehog is that black doesn't have a lot of activity. He doesn't get activity until white breaks the position open. The key to the hedgehog is black doesn't do anything to break it open. He waits and acts only when white does. And often there's a great deal of versatility in the position, and when white does finally make some kind of a positional break, black will be poised to meet it. So black's kind of stuck for moves here. All he can do is kind of wiggle around a little bit. Now, how can he wiggle around a little bit? Well, this knight is stuck. It's waiting for the c5 break. So we really can't wiggle around with that too much. We have to anticipate a file opening up. Which file is going to open up? One way to do it is put a rook on c7 or a rook on d7. Pick one of those moves. The idea is it preserves the option of doubling on either file. We don't know yet. But black doesn't have a whole deal of activity to do anything with. And that's, like I say, one of the drawbacks with the hedgehog. Meanwhile, white will just try to improve his position. Now let's just kind of wiggle around here a little bit. Let's try this move. Now I'm going to swing this rook over so that the queen can come back. Now let's say black decides that he thinks the D file would be dandy, so he comes over here. Now white backs his queen up. Now what does black do? Well, he decides he wants to reinforce D6 a little more. Okay, so he goes there, and white plays this. And like I say, this is just nothing more than a possible line. It's not forced. It's not the only line. We're just kind of looking at this to see what can develop. Okay, now really white still has much more board room, much more flexibility with his pieces, and it's black's move. How does he improve his position? We're not really threatening D6. Let's swing the. Well, you got to be careful. There's just this has been staring me in the face all this time. B5 trapping the bishop. See, I often don't see one movers, so let's double the rooks on the other file. Okay, let's double the rooks on the other file and keep the bishop free. And now we bring the queen back, and we still swing the knight back, and we come here. Now we look for a move for black. Okay, let's just put the bishop here for the fun of it. Now, is white ready to break C5? That's a good question. He's got B4 pawn, the queen, and the bishop on it. Black has 2 pawns, a knight, and 2 rooks. White is not ready to break with C5 unless he can do something tactically. And the only thing tactically I can think of is when the D file opens up, keep an eye on D7, but he's got to be careful. The knight on C3 could end up getting dropped. This hedgehog type of position is very, very tough to break, but you have to have patience. Who wants to play the black side of this? I mean, white can just slowly, methodically, just improve his position ever so slightly, while black has to repeat moves. You know, we just go like this, and black retreats, and then white grabs a little more territory, and black repeats, and then white says, well, I want to get another, well, you can't go knight A4. Decides on F4. Black repeats, and then white starts thinking about getting E5 in, or maybe before white does anything, he doubles his rook somewhere. You know, it's a purely defensive formation, and it's solid. And like I say, a lot of times once white gets his breaks in the position, black is poised to cover it. So let's just, for the fun of it, let's sacrifice a pawn. Let's see what we can uncover here. Suppose white finally says, hey, I can't get anything done. I'm going to sack a pawn. Okay, let's sack the pawn and see what happens. Okay, need to take back with the pawn. Now these rooks aren't really doing all that much. How does white continue? Well, let's see. Let's go kick that rook. Okay, and then he hits the knight because the bishop's on it too. We reinforce, and look, black's got the open B file, and black's a pawn ahead. Well, you're going to drop this pawn back. Can't play rook there. Seems like black has plenty of reasonable moves here, but white hasn't demonstrated anything from this. So if black just hunkers down and plays defense, and recognizes that he's in a hedgehog and can sit there and just play defensive chess, white's going to have trouble cracking it open. Okay, so let's go back to where we were when all this started. I got to find it the right spot. Okay. Now, granted, none of those lines were forced. They were just potential lines of play designed to show you what might happen. So I was recommending 18 knight b3, but black has to know how to defend that position. And if he's lower rated, there's a chance he doesn't. But let's see how knight takes c6 works. I didn't criticize it. I just said normally what I'd do is not make an exchange. I'd like to keep the pieces on the board, but let's see how it all comes out. Now white does this, and it actually works out just fine because black makes another poor choice here, and see, black still has a hedgehog formation, but as I was saying in that long example of what you do in a hedgehog, black waits. He waits for white to break, and then, and only then, does he react. Well, what happens here is black is in the hedgehog pretty close to it. Black decides to break the position. Now, he goes back to the plan of the Maroczy bind, but he does phase 2 of it. As I was saying, the way to play is to get b5 in, and then and only then get d5 in. And what happens is black tries to win this game too quickly, and this basically just exposes the entire black position, and white gets this wonderful game because the game opens up in his favor. So black makes his critical error. He plays d5, and as I've explained, it's a mistake because black didn't do what he was supposed to. So now if you understand somebody's a hedgehog and what he should do in a hedgehog, or what he should do in a Maroczy bind, when you see the wrong move coming, you can say, hey, wow, that's the wrong move. At least I think it is. Now you start analyzing the position. And when you get into the tactics that arise here, they're not that difficult to see because basically you're looking a lot of forcing moves. A forcing move requires a recapture. Take something, something else gets taken, and so forth and on down the line. Okay, so but this is a mistake, and white's pretty much got a really good game now. And at this point, black's next move, it's fine in spirit and intent, but white refutes it brilliantly. But I'm sure that if that black looked at this and didn't want to go into to the alternative. The natural move is pawn takes. Okay, now I'm sure he saw this move, knight takes here, and it gets very tricky. White is attacking the queen, and he's attacking the rook. So, for instance, a move like queen e8 fails to rook takes rook. And the queen can't retake the rook because knight e7 check wins the queen. And even though black is on the queen, that rook is going to be lost. So black's only recourse to try to save this, and this isn't the only line, I'll just show one, white can look at it. His only recourse is to try this move, and this allows white to win some material. But black gets a little bit of counterplay here. We'll see what it is. Okay, so now then we swap this rook. Okay, if black had seen this far, he would have seen he has some potential here. Now you attack the rook, and simultaneously there's a threat of bishop d4. Okay, so white can't just nonchalantly bring the rook back to the oh, and there's also a threat on this bishop. So black has 3 threats in this position. So white can't play rook c1 to guard the bishop. He can't play rook c4 to guard d4. Therefore, white must play queen c1. And now black has this interesting move, bishop checks, and where to put the white king. If what's going to happen here is we'll just look at king f1, and we'll talk about king h1. Black has this interesting interference motive here. The idea is to trap the rook. Now, if white tries to save that rook, like for instance with b6 or b5 rather, all of a sudden black gets a lot of play here. And although white will pretty much have to give back the exchange, but after knight takes here, it's true black is down a pawn, but his knight's active, his knight's on a perfect outpost, his queen's active, it's in the center of the board, and white is, his pieces are passive. There's a lot of pawns on white squares, the color of the bishop. it's a tough position, and that like I say, that's only one line, but at some point White's going to have to give back the exchange, it seems, and if White does it immediately, Black gets his pawn back. So, but I guess he didn't see it, or because it's long and involved, I can't say, but the resource was there, but the movie plays loses, okay, and like I say, White handled this perfectly. Well, maybe not perfectly. He handled it very, very well. Okay, oh, I was doing it again. He played, okay, Queen takes b4, and now he's saying, well, if you take my rook, I'm going to get your queen. Well, White looks at this and says, gee, I'll bite. Okay, so now Black's move probably is forced. He's now down a rook, so he's going to have to take the queen. He's got a knight loose, and I'm even wondering in this position if White can't get away with taking this knight now. It's something for White to sit down and analyze. Clearly, the rook comes back to d8. To stop it, we just take it. It's free. That pawn may be queening, and White's picking up an extra piece. So that's something for White to analyze. I don't want to prove everything. I think you learn more if you actually sit and work these things out. If I show it to you, I'm giving the answer. Yeah, you're right. Well, figure it out yourself. You learn to analyze. Okay, so now there's nothing wrong with bishop d2. I mean, White's winning. It's just a question of how Black succumbs. So there's many nice ways to win, and usually when you have a very nice long tactical combination, there are several paths to victory. You don't always have to play the best one. You can find the best one in the postmortem. Afterwards, you go and sit down and you try to find what you could have done. Okay, so now the king runs off to h1, and now let's stop and take stock. Okay, White has given up his queen and a pawn for 2 rooks. So that's roughly in point count chess. That's about an even trade. But White has some tactical shots here. He's being aggressive. He immediately has a discovery, and this is a potent discovery because there's some threats. Black has to be very, very careful here. Like for instance, he plays queen e8, but if he plays queen d7, White's still gonna play the move he plays, or maybe look and find a better move. Okay, he plays queen e8, and then based on tactics, White comes down here with the rook, and says, "Okay, take my queen." And then you can see if Black does, there's a knight fork. So, question is, does queen d7 save Black? Well, as I was saying, White probably does the same thing anyway. Well, actually, he doesn't. He can increase the pressure in so many ways. Let's see. Let's try it. I'm not sure if it's the right move. Something for White to work on. Now Black has the option of bringing a knight back to e8. I don't think that's going to last long because of bishop h6. So and also White even has the aggressive move rook c7 at his disposal, followed by knight takes knight check and grab this knight. I mean, there's more than one way to win this. Anyway, Black played queen e8, so the wins are there, and just about no matter what Black does, I'm sure White can find a win. And now it's a good position to look at. White to play and do the best he can. Pause the video. Okay, you've resumed. I'm sure there's probably more than one way to do this, but I like White's move a lot. What White did was play bishop b5, and that queen says, "Oh my God, just leave me alone, for goodness sake." The idea is, take my bishop. I'm going to get your knight with check. What are Black's alternatives? Queen f8 just allows bishop b4, and I think the queen is checkmated there. So kind of forces this move, it seems. And then now we get the piece back, and again Black does not want to play bishop f8 because bishop h6 is just gonna be deadly. Here, let's just show you. Even though there's an attempt to defend. Watch this. Okay, now we swing the rook over, but the problem is white just increases the pressure. He gives a check here, forcing the king in the corner, and you can take with this rook, keep the rook on the 8th rank. And oh no, you can't. There's queen check here. That's mate. I was looking at queen b1 check, rook d1. You got to be careful, but still, after this move, black can hang it up. Mate is coming. I don't see a defense. There is none. Anyway, such a wonderful position to have. So black brought his knight back, and it's white's turn still. So it goes here. Now it's a new fork. The knight's forking the queen, and this knight is pinned. So it's interesting that a knight can make a fork, and one of the recipients of its torture is another knight. Because usually you can't fork a piece of the same kind because it can take you. Well, the defensive power of a pinned piece is purely imaginary, and that knight on e8 is going nowhere. So black throws his queen to the 7th. Doesn't the alternative maybe was to stick it on e2 and attack a rook. Let's see, does that have any worth to it? Queen e2. Well, not really. You get this knight with check, and all you have to do is deal with the mate threat, and it's curtains for. It's going to be curtains here for black pretty quick. He's just down too much wood. Let's see. Where's this? Where are we going to put the rook? We almost just take this bishop. Check. Where's the king going to go? Maybe this doesn't work. But a rook and 2 minor pieces is going to beat a queen. Although maybe in this position, black's going to get some counterplay because he's going to gobble on e2. I'm probably missing a better move, but it's something for white to uncover. I don't need to prove everything. You guys work on these games, you can find better moves. Hey, I found the move our rats missed. Well, good. Hope you do. Okay, so now rook takes. But anyway, black didn't play queen e2. He played queen b2, which loses quicker. So now just take this with check, and here it's over. The only move to stop mate just loses the queen. And black is down 2 rooks. But I think it was a wonderful game by white, and it was made possible because black didn't understand the strategy, what he's supposed to do. He didn't understand the Moxie bind, and he didn't understand the hedgehog. And whether white understood it or not doesn't really matter. White didn't have to. The opportunity presented itself. But now white knows, if he didn't know already, white knows a little bit more about the Moxie bind and the hedgehog, and can plan accordingly next time he faces it. Well, anyways, it's a pleasure making a video of a nice game because there's always so much to these. Even a game that white plays very well, there's a lot of instructional value in it, and I hope all of you gain something from this, and wish you nothing but good success in your chess. Let me get this posted and move on to the next one. There's still a few more to catch up with. Keep them coming. Thanks again. Take care. Bye.